This is the iPhone 15 Plus, the larger version of what Apple considers as new camera, new design, Newphoria, and yeah, we go through that final term a bit in our base iPhone 15 review. The thing is, to call this just the blown-up version of that phone would be kind of an oversimplification in most ways. I don't think any company goes through the extent of manufacturing two variants of something unless they both serve different markets, and this phone is the perfect example of that. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and let's dive into our full review. I think the best way to start is by looking into a bit of history. I, for one, was bummed out that the 13 mini was discontinued for last year's 14 Plus up until I used it. See, before that phone, the only way to get a larger iPhone was to pay more to go Pro, and the reality is that a lot of people just want a larger screen. We see it now with Apple's launch of the 15-inch MacBook Air and even the rumored larger 12.9-inch iPad Air. The problem last year was that there was quite a bit of compromise for the price, so I'm suspecting most people just didn't see enough of a retail difference with the Pro or Pro Max to try it out. This iPhone 15 Plus solves most of that, in addition to a few additional pain points. I think my favorite element is how Apple has refined this hardware. Visually, it's easy to assume it's the same as last year, but trust me, hold it and you'll see the change. This new color-infused glass match with the curved borders gives it a far better feel, almost as if you had a skin on it, and since the finish is now matte, your concerns for fingerprints are gone. I know some have criticized the muted colors, to which I partially agree. Each color is like a different shade of white, but it's still pretty elegant, though I think that's why I've found myself drifting more to the matte black variant, as that one is not subtle at all. Still, given the fact that this phone is lighter than the 15 Pro Max by nearly 20 grams, this is a solution for anyone wanting a larger screen without the heft. And since we've already started, let's continue talking about the display. The only technical difference between this panel and the 15 Pro Max is that it's a standard 60Hz refresh rate versus variable 120Hz, which also means no always-on display. In everything else, this 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR has the same color accuracy, colors, and viewing angles that we praise for Apple every year. You even get the same peak brightness of 2000 nits and HDR certifications, which means that the combination of this with the dual firing speakers is ideal for content consumption. Yes, we did see something similar in accessibility before. Now, a welcomed addition is Apple's Dynamic Island, which has grown on me a lot since last year. I'm still not a fan of how it interrupts 18:9 video, but it makes up for how useful it is while you're riding an Uber or using the United application at an airport. Small little tidbits like quickly accessing the music that's playing or knowing how much time is left on your timer without being in the app is a pretty thoughtful way of making you find purpose in what used to be the notch. But then there are things that start getting interesting once you look into internals. You realize that you pretty much have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, but on a lighter build and actually better in some ways. That means Apple's A16 Bionic, which is still faster than most chips out there, a pretty good amount of RAM and storage options, a pretty large battery, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.3, all flavors of 5G, and then new is Apple's second generation UWB chip to help you find friends in a crowd, assuming they also have an iPhone 15 variant that can do the same. USB-C also finally made the cut, along with a pretty nice braided cable that came in the box. Sure, the Pro has faster speeds, but at this point, AirDrop is too convenient for most people to care. And speaking of software features, iOS 17 has been probably Apple's most interesting update because it's pretty much designed to shine most with your other friends with iPhones. Yeah, you know what that means. Seriously, I praise elements like messaging now transcribing your voice messages automatically, which services like Telegram charge you for, though yeah, blue bubbles only. I love the option to be able to leave a FaceTime video message when who I call doesn't pick up, though yeah, only on iOS. AirDrop just got even easier by simply getting two iPhones together to even name drop contacts, which is more convenient than finding people on a list, but of course, that doesn't include your friend on Android. You get the picture, but don't worry, it's not all about that. Standby has made me get MagSafe stands for everywhere I go, simply because of how cool it is to use this phone as a massive bedside clock while charging. I've also praised Apple's approach to widgets before, but now I love that you can go directly to each element and not just opening the app. Last but not least, I do love how you can personalize contact cards, giving the most bare-bones application the character it deserves since day one. About the only thing that I don't like about iOS in general is its lack of an approach for larger phones. There is so much screen real estate here for multi-window or for other forms of multitasking, and yet this remains just a blown-up version of the iPhone 15. Pop-up videos have still not reached YouTube unless you use the browser. Overall, there's just a lot of missed opportunities to give the bigger phone a better experience. That said, the main reason why this iPhone matters regardless of its shortcomings is because the main request from most users is great battery life, and that's where this variant shines. Boy howdy, does this phone last all day and then some. Like the iPhone 7 Plus and 8 Plus, this phone follows on that endurance legacy, even with a smaller battery than your standard Android phone. My tests were on AT&T's 5G network, and regardless of how long phone calls were or as I spent a full day of data, I just could not kill this power pack, and service was great and reliable. So yeah, standard refresh rate does have its benefits. If you're a gamer, going pro might be the way to go, though I'd do some research if your favorite games support ProMotion first. The other reason why you should care is because these cameras are more than meets the eye. In almost every way, this 15 Plus is a 14 Pro Max, at least when you look at the numbers on the spec card. Sure, it's lacking the 3x telephoto, but this primary is a new generation stack sensor, which enables a 2x optical that's good enough to be considered a third lens because it goes through a different pipeline, but then it's better than the 14 Pro Max in new features like next generation portraits. If you ever see the f-stop indicator in the bottom left, it means the phone is capturing depth information even without you telling it to. The result is not just that you can turn a regular photo into a portrait, but also that you can switch this later if you don't like what you see. I find it best when using selfies since I don't like Apple's default portrait crop. I've praised Apple's Deep Fusion for years, giving you results that I've liked so much that I've switched to an iPhone entirely for my personal Instagram feed, if you notice. Now, as for the rest of the photos, yeah, I stick to Apple's rich contrast profile given it's more artistic in its color palette, which, by the way, I feel has gotten better with this year's photonic engine in harsh environments, not like before where it would sometimes overblow the highlights. The result is just the right amount of color contrast and saturation, and it doesn't matter which focal length you pick, color is preserved. You'll probably notice that I spend most of my time using the 2x optical crop, and it's mainly because its 52mm equivalent is my favorite for street photography. You can go up to 10x, but I'm not gonna recommend those results. In low light, one thing I praise about iPhones is that they don't overblow how things look in real life. I wouldn't necessarily trust the ultra-wide for harsh scenarios, but the primary, which is, by the way, also the telephoto, has the advantage of getting some real good shots in dim environments, even if, yeah, I wish this night mode control wasn't arbitrary to when the system thinks that you need it. Video is then the feature iPhones do so well that before I would say you don't get a camera unless you're doing low light, but today I say switch on HDR, which has been tuned far better now, and don't buy a camera for the night clips. Since again this is a 14 Pro, you get that 4K cinematic video, which is now lossless in 2x for street shots, and all with the quality we've praised from iPhones ever since the iPhone 4. And then you also get that action mode at 2.5K, which now I notice has gotten a boost even in darker scenarios whenever you want super steady video from the primary cameras. Sure, not all features are available for the selfie module, but it remains just as good in color, saturation, and even stabilization and dynamic range as if you were using the primary, and you now even get autofocus on the selfie module. And by the way, this is regardless of you doing 4K at 24, 30, or 60 frames per second. To conclude, I think it's important to note that Apple has stopped overpromising and under-delivering a while ago. At no point does the company call this the best phone in the world. They call these the best iPhones they've ever made, and particularly in the case of this Plus model, I am going to agree. Ever since the Pro iPhones launched with the 11 series, the base models were always plagued with compromises, but this is the first time that I can honestly say that I've spent my time with this iPhone without wishing that I was using the other Pro models. Last year, I did call this phone too expensive for what you got, mainly because of how much better the Pro was for just $100 more. This year, not so much, because this phone has become that Pro model in features with the larger display that I want and that battery life that I also want. And listen, I know that for a good amount of people, a phone is their form of entertainment, but for most of us, a phone is our workhorse, our communication tool that should work as hard and as long as we do. And for those needing the best iPhone for 16-hour workdays, this should be your phone. Are there other Android phones out there with better specs for the same or less money? Sure. Do any of these have this level of endurance? It's kind of a mixed bag, but also. The thing is, not even the Pro iPhones last this long, so that's why I feel this phone exists, because there's also such a thing as a market of people that want an iPhone, period, regardless of how much better there are Android phones out there. This for me is like the pickup truck of smartphones, but with the looks and materials of a Mercedes and the engine of a Ferrari for the heavy loads. The difference this year is that the things that in the past were secondary mostly got addressed with this model, which is why I don't have a problem in recommending it to those in need of a phone that's more of a tool. Yes, you're still $100 away from the 15 Pro, but stay tuned for that review. See, the Pros this year are taking a leap that's making them more than just phones, which is great for a creator like me, but kind of overkill for most people. Unless, of course, you want to brag of your phone having 3 camera lenses and not 2, which you know who you are. Otherwise, this iPhone is pretty great. Let me know if you agree with my assessment in the comments down below, and while you're at it, follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me like this Plus model more than I thought I would. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.